Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome to Mastery, the show and podcast for brilliant spiritual beings just like you, having a human experience ready to ignite the mastery inherent in you, as well as grow and expand from within and wanting to lead with love in work, business, and life. Designed to activate the mastery already within you, here we merge the worlds of seen and unseen, magic and miracles with the mundane and the practical, spirituality with strategy, the energetic with the physical, and business, work, and life with a whole lot of love and soul. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, business developer, and radical love rebel Maria Saraphina. And it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode with you. I serve business owners and leaders wanting to learn and be supported as you navigate leading with heart and soul. I do that through the Spiritual Leadership Academy, the Spiritual MBA, and one-on-one spiritual business coaching full of intuition and energetic alignment. You can find out more about everything on my website, mariasarafina.com. Having been called to this show and podcast, it is my strong guess that mastery is already inherent within you, Radiant One. If you'd like to expand and amplify that mastery, download the Mastery Activation I've created for you. Originally released within my paid membership, The Elevation, I've now made it available to all. Go to mariasarafina.com/MA or click the link in the description to receive it. Remember, if you enjoy Mastery, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, or leave a review to amplify the energy and love being shared in these transmissions so they can reach more and more gorgeous radiant beings like you. Today I'm joined by Chonteau, who has been walking the medicine path for over 30 years. Chonteau is a teacher of embodying the sacred, and as a social worker by degree, her experience in that arena for over 20 years gives her unique perspectives about love, life, and living in the light. Her lineage is indigenous, and this communal feminine worldview is brought into her teachings and is central at her core. Chonteau is the founder of Soul Care University, an education, healing, and transformation center, and offers various containers and offerings that cultivate an inner conscious culture. Also the author of 2 books, she loves the birds singing in the morning, the dew on the flowers, and the way the ancient trees call her into their wisdom. The silence of the morning is her favorite time of day. It is where she greets the sun and plants seeds of beauty. She loves dancing in the shadows and all the hidden places we try to avoid. It is there in those cracks of darkness our greatest medicine resides. As with so many of my guests, inviting Chonteau on Mastery was completely based on intuition and resonance. A dear mentor shared just a snippet about Chonteau in an Instagram story, and something clicked for me. Sitting with her for this sacred conversation, that click was only confirmed and deepened as Chonteau shared the sacredness of her spiritual journey through perimenopause into menopause and beyond, moonpause as she's dubbed it. I hope you'll enjoy this sacred conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Here it is. Chonteau, welcome to Mastery. Thank you for being willing to jump in with a stranger and join in sacred conversation. As I was just sharing with you, we quote unquote connected through a mutual connection. And she'd shared something about you in her stories on Instagram, and there was something about it for me that there was a pull for me in terms of I wanna sit with this woman, I wanna sit with this person in sacred conversation, and I'm so happy that you said yes, even though I have no idea where this conversation. Well, we have a slight idea where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Would you start out by just introducing you to us and to our world, letting us know who you are and what your practice is? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So first, yes, thank you. I love sacred conversations, just to be clear. I love the deepening and the opening. I love getting to know people and just hearing and sharing what's going on. So I love the title, Sacred Conversations. I love that. So, my name's Chonteau, and I live here in Central Florida. A little town outside of Orlando.
Mm.
So I'm west of Orlando. So most people know where Orlando is because of just Disney and the things. And
Yeah.
so I'm a little bit west of that, in one of the hilliest areas of Central Florida.
Oh,
Florida's not known for hills,
no.
unless you're like up North Florida way.
Oh,
But in Central Florida, there is a little town called Mineola or Claremont area, and it has lots of hills, and that's what drew us out here. And
wow.
it's
Okay.
a little bit rural,
Yay.
and that's what also drew us out here. Now it's all built up, but so yeah, I definitely am more connected into the countryside, and I like space and I like the land. And there's lots of space and land out here.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I hang out. This behind me is a picture of my backyard, where I spend most of my time during the day. So yeah, trying to think of, it's always a loaded question when I have to like answer. Introduce yourself.
Yes.
So I have been walking this medicine path probably since it's been about 35, 36 years. I started when I was about 20 and I'm 50, about to be 55.
Mm.
So I am deeply connected into my indigenous roots, and I share a lot of the medicine teachings through my practices. I love the land, I love nature, and I love her support of us and her blueprint. So
Mm.
that weaves its way into lots of the things that I do and how I be and show up in the world.
Mm.
Um, like professionally, I'm a retired social worker of about 20 something years. And I left that profession and went 100% into the medicine teachings that
Mm.
I do. And I started in a school, Soul Care University, which
Mm.
is a healing and training and transformation center. And so
Mm.
that's where a lot of what I do kind of comes out of there.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I just follow the thread of the remembrance and what is ancient in all of us.
Beautiful. Thank you for introducing
Yeah.
yourself. I know. It's always like, how do you like go about this, and I do, and I like, yeah. But that
Yeah.
was beautiful, especially there's a sacredness, there's a groundedness, and there's a clear medicine in what you share. Like there's a like the word that comes up is root. Like there's rootedness
Mm-hmm.
in what you
Mm-hmm.
share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the reason why I wanted to join with you in the sacred conversation is because I was called to start a segment of mastery called My Last Bleed, where I have conversations with people who have either gone through perimenopause and entered the menopause phase, or is in it and are willing to share their journeys.
Yeah.
And you said yes to that, so yay.
Yeah.
Like I also shared before, the first conversation I had with Julie Parker, who's in Australia, made me realize a bunch of stuff personally, even before the episode aired. And so, yeah, I'm just looking forward to hearing what you like the medicine that you are going to be bringing us today as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
When was, if like, where are you at in your journey right now? Have you had the quote unquote so-called last bleed? Are you in menopause or past it?
I have had my last bleed.
Yeah.
Yes, I have had my last bleed. I had my last bleed at 44.
Okay.
Hmm. Yes, I transitioned to menopause. I actually call it menopause,
Menopause. Okay.
because the moon is you were closely associated. Our the moon is closely associated with the cycle of the moon is our cycle, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when I was bleeding, it was being in moon. So when I was
Mm.
like when my 4 or 5 day bleed time would come, I would
Yeah.
say I'm in moon
Okay.
because it's connection and it's got has its roots in indigenous technologies. And
Yeah.
so um, now that I'm not bleeding, it's menopause. So the moon has paused. I no longer have moon times.
Yeah.
So I call it menopause. So if you hear me refer to it as menopause, you'll know what I'm saying.
I love that. And do you then, because I noticed, I mean, for me personally, I'm perimenopausal, and I noticed that there is a clear correlation between the actual moon and my cycle. I can
Hmm.
see that there is the intensity of things, like if I'm
Hmm.
ovulating and we're moving towards full moon,
Hmm.
everything seems to just be intensified and
Yeah.
heightened for me. And
Yeah.
same way, if it's waxing, then
Yes.
the same. So do you now follow, or do you have a different connection to the moon now that you're in menopause?
Excuse me. No, my connection is still just as strong.
Yeah.
What happens is, so the actual moon, you our menstrual cycle is the moon cycle.
Mm,
From new moon, full moon, waxing, waning, like all of that is happening
mm.
inside of us when
Yes.
we are still bleeding, right?
Yes. Yes.
So we can, that's part of like being in moon, we're in the moon cycle. So when
Yeah.
we have paused our moon cycle, when we're menopause, I now follow the moon cycle
Yes.
solely,
Yes.
as because the moon cycle is not happening inside of me anymore.
Yes.
Now I follow the moon cycle.
Yes.
So the actual moon cycle.
Yes.
So my connection is the same.
Yes.
It's might even, you might even say over the years it's more enhanced,
Yeah.
just because of living
Yes.
and deepening into the practice
Yes.
of following the moon and following, the womb space and the
Yeah.
body and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you know when you had your last bleed, did you know that that was the direction it was going? Like, what were the years prior to your last bleed like for you?
Yes, I definitely knew that I was moving towards menopause because I had such a gentle transition. I'm so grateful to have had such
Oh,
an extremely gentle transition into menopause.
mm,
So I started having hot flashes, which was one of my first, and I was having hot flashes even before I was pregnant with my
oh,
last child.
okay. Oh,
So I was in perimenopausal when I had my last child
yeah,
at 37.
yeah,
And so the hot flashes were there and they were intensifying, and I was having other bodily sensations that was letting me know that I was moving in.
yeah,
I was definitely full in perimenopausal
yeah.
space. And then I went from bleeding every month to bleeding every other month.
Okay,
And then I went to bleeding every other month. And
okay,
then I went to bleeding every other month. And it was just this really beautiful, slow process over probably from 38 to 40.
yeah,
It was only 2 years
yeah,
that my bleeding just began to taper off
yeah,
until I think I was actually 42.
yeah,
42 was what I thought was going to be my last bleed.
yeah.
And 2 years later, to the day of my birthday at 44, was my last bleed.
Oh,
Like I didn't have any bleed for 2 years, and then on my 44th birthday, I had my last bleed, and it was one day, and
oh,
it was beautiful and gentle and just so loving,
wow.
and I knew that was my last bleed.
And how, before the last bleed arrived, like, did you, like, in the days leading up to, did you have any experiences, or did you know it was coming, or like, or and maybe you didn't know before, but you can see it in hindsight, like,
Right, right. So I have been working with my blood since 20. So working with my blood, working in my womb space, work like
wow,
this has been a practice of mine
wow, okay,
for since 20 years old. So moving into perimenopausal was not scary. It was welcome. There was lots of
yeah,
ceremony around
yeah,
this experience, lots of journaling. There was a lot of introspection, just a lot. And I have people within my community that we're of the same
yeah,
ideology around this.
yeah,
So the conversations weren't weird or strange. Like
No.
Like, this is just a part of who I be, and it's a part of who I've been since 20. So when I got to the hot flashes, I began working with those hot flashes, and I began doing lots of meditation, lots of ceremony, knowing that the time was coming.
Yeah.
Didn't know when and how, but just knew I was in that phase of it is coming and it's coming. And then when things started, every other month, every other month,
Yeah.
just kind of, then again, I just began continuing to stay working with my body, working with my womb, working with my blood, like really just easing my way into this
Yeah.
next phase of life. So when my last bleed came at 42,
Yeah.
what I thought was like, I wasn't surprised,
No.
I just, and I just continued my practices.
Yeah.
And then for it to come on my birthday at 44, I knew how sacred this was.
Yes.
I
Yes.
knew, and I
Yes.
continued to work with that.
Yes.
So it was very non-medical. It was
Yes.
a very non-clinical experience. I
Yeah.
never reached out to my quote unquote doctors to
No.
like help me with certain things
No.
because this was just a natural occurrence and
Yes. But I
I
suppose
allowed
that's
it.
also because of all of the work, because one of the things that's coming up for me as I hear you say this is we seem to have lost, first of all, the different transitions that we go through throughout life, our teenage years. And so
Mhm.
do you think that having worked with your blood for so long was part of that? And I'm wondering if that's why so many of us today, myself included, are quote unquote challenged by it
Mhm.
because we have not, because I can see where other areas where I've done the work for the past 20 years, like
Mhm.
I will slide through those like today, like things. And so does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. I think my connection to my womb, my connection to my pussy, my connection to my all of my lady parts
Yeah.
at such an early age, what I would consider early, but
Oh
in
yeah.
some traditions, actually 20 is late.
Yes. Yes.
So, right?
Yeah.
So, but in westernized concepts of thinking, right, it
Yes.
was early.
Yes.
Absolutely, I believe because of that relationship
Yes.
and the working with
Yeah.
that it was such a gentle transition.
Wow.
And also, right, not just like, even if it wasn't a gentle transition, and even if it was a like challenging transition,
Yeah.
it still would have been in alignment. And I
Yes.
still would have
Yes.
attributed it to my connection, right?
Yes.
There is just simply, I have a relationship with
Yes.
my womb space
Yes.
and with my blood. And like, I just have a
Yeah.
relationship the
Yeah.
way I have a relationship with my heart, the heart medicine, or
Yeah.
like, I just simply have a relationship. And
Yeah.
that just has made it so much richer
Yeah.
for me.
And that's where we see the I don't know if it's destruction or the not even the destruction, but with the disconnection from our bodies, um the different transitions, like again from
Mm-hmm.
when we start to bleed and
Mm-hmm.
when we move through the different phases and we
Right.
enter a bleed, the severing, the disconnection that has happened from our bodies, the disconnection from the indigenous cultures of the world, like and our indigenous practices. um and when I say indigenous, I don't necessarily, it seems as though every culture on earth has had, these different phases, of or ways of teachings of dealing medicine, as you
Mm-hmm.
call them, moving through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wow, I'm just that's I'm equally sad for those of us. Like for me, it's challenging right
Yeah.
now because it's not
Yeah.
something that I've worked with, and I'm also happy and grateful that we're sharing because hopefully this then can spread to 20 years olds to
Mm-hmm.
15-year-olds to like to the mothers of
Mm-hmm.
today that are going through this can then educate their
Mm-hmm.
children and
Mm-hmm.
their young ones on this.
Yeah.
Okay. And what are some of like what if you want to share in terms of
Yeah.
working with the blood, like how did and has it changed through like from your, I suppose it's changed through your 20s through
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy and then through menopause. How
Mm-hmm.
what practices or if there's anything you want to share in terms of that?
Yeah. So do you mean the practices of working with my blood?
Yeah, and
Okay.
home space, the blood and
Uh-huh.
space.
And the womb space, yeah. So when I first started um honoring, right, my womb, I was one that had terrible cramps when I was
Yeah,
younger, like
yeah,
13, 14, terrible, terrible cramps. It was a curse. It was a terrible time of the month. Like there was all that negative
yeah,
connotation that we have around.
yeah.
My mother was not one who was educated or versed in
No,
moon blood and that whole aspect. So I kind of entered in with the classic theories of it's just you just got to get through it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just gonna hurt.
yeah. Look it
Um,
up, buttercup.
yeah,
Right? Yeah,
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 and as a young girl, like she was natural enough to where like you drink your tea, you have your heating pad, and there were certain
yeah,
ways that she showed me how to lay down that would lessen the pain
mm,
and discomfort, that type of thing.
yeah,
But when I just began my, let's say, spiritual awakening and just wanting to go deeper into these other areas.
mm,
And when I started doing that, I started studying indigenous cultures
yeah,
and connecting with my own lineages.
yeah,
And I began to learn that women were seen differently and women were treated differently and
mm,
women had different ideologies than that of modern day. And
mm,
in that practice, I learned how important the womb space was, how
mm,
important your blood and your menses were, and how
yeah,
much I just began to learn those things. So
yeah,
some of my first things that I would do was um, sharing my blood with the land,
yeah,
like gathering my blood. And
yeah,
this was pre cups, like
yeah. I was gonna say this
what the
is
young women have now is
yeah, yeah,
we didn't use those things. We
yeah,
just had these big old pads, or
yeah,
we had
yeah,
these so I would bleed in a bowl,
yeah,
and I would go outside in my yard where I grew up,
yeah,
and I would begin sharing my blood
yeah,
like with the earth,
yeah,
and I would meditate. Like those are the beginnings, and I would just meditate.
yeah,
And I began to shift my ideas around what this time of the month meant. And
yes,
so as I learned, like, oh, my blood is magical, so then I might start smearing blood on me,
yeah,
doing blood paintings. And then I started meeting other women who were also of these ideas. And so then
yeah,
we would share, like, oh, what are you doing? So a lot of massaging and meditating,
yeah,
and these are kind of just surface things.
yeah,
Like some of that deeper work is understanding like the functionality spiritually of our womb space, of our
mm,
sacred cauldron. So
mm,
just these practices of learning and
yeah,
journaling,
yeah,
so journaling and deepening in, and and then like working with the outer, right? So
mm,
the outer lips and the
yeah,
inner labia, so like working within the pussy, and just again, what am I holding here, what does this mean, like just
yeah,
really doing the emotional work and not leaving the
yeah,
womb space out, which is what I find. We
mm,
do the spiritual work and
yeah,
we leave the womb space out of our spiritual work. We
yeah,
leave the womb space
mm,
out of our emotional work. We kind of just stick to our heart,
yeah, yeah,
and we don't think about our uterus as our second heart.
mm,
So that connection and doing energy
yeah,
medicine, just all those types of things.
yeah,
And it shifts and changes throughout the year if
yeah,
you, especially if you are guided by her,
mm,
right? So if because I felt guided by her, I was always led to some practice, some ritual, some ceremony, sitting in sacred space, having sacred conversation,
Yes.
right? There's something
Yeah.
called the vagina monologues here,
Yeah.
that used to travel around, I think, wherever it went.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was like a play of all these women and all these different stories, and
Yeah.
they're sharing the stories of their vaginas,
Yeah.
right? And so I
Yeah.
remember going to a couple of those when they would come through here.
Yeah.
And for me, like, what does she hold?
Yeah.
What is she trying to share with us? And all of our experiences are held in our womb space. Like, so just kind of deepening and creating
Yes.
practices around those, like meditation,
Yeah.
group of girlfriends coming together and having conversation,
Yes.
bleeding on the earth,
Yes.
painting. Just
Yes.
what are the ways in which you get to know a friend,
Yeah.
right? If my womb space, if my blood, if all that is my friend,
Yeah.
what are the ways in which I want to get to know her the best that I can? And then the other pieces are understanding it's the moon cycle.
Yeah.
And so understanding the moods
Yes.
and the flow and the times of expansion, the
Yeah.
times of rest, the times of deep magic, like really understanding how that flow is inside of me,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then continuing just to research the multiple cultures, my own first,
Yeah.
um, and understanding, their connection, which is my connection. And
Yeah.
so that type of thing, those type of things I've done.
From I remember, I don't know how long ago this was, maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago, when I started noticing, I started tracking my cycle and I started noticing um, the differences in my mood, as you say, or my
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
experience, and also my the connection to the work that I do in my business. And
Mm-hmm.
I could see where it gave me a deeper understanding and greater, I suppose, empathy for myself in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is not just something that happens out of the blue. There's actually a rhythm and a cycle to it. And it
Mm-hmm.
is okay to be moving through this. It's not
Mm-hmm.
through, it's not, it's to be worked with, not
Yeah.
against or
Mm-hmm.
forced through. And
Mm-hmm.
the more I've started doing that, um, the quote unquote easier it became.
Yeah.
I had a greater, yeah, I suppose empathy for myself and not like
Mm-hmm.
recognizing, okay, I am bleeding. It's not the time to be go, go, go and doing all the videos
Mm-hmm.
and all the
Mm-hmm.
things. Now I
Mm-hmm.
try as much as possible to schedule recordings
Mm-hmm.
through near my ovulation because I know that
Yeah.
that's when I'm the most external, most extra,
Mm-hmm.
the most on. And then,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that how critical I can be when I am on day 22 or day
Mm-hmm.
23. And it's like, oh, and also I do that with my clients as well. I ask them
Mm-hmm.
like, so where are you in your cycle currently? Because sometimes when we're very harsh with ourselves, it's like, and I
Yeah.
don't mean that it's not derogatory or anything. It's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's more to give them an understanding of,
Yeah.
yeah, you're on day 22 and the world can fudge off and that's okay. That's perfectly
Mm-hmm.
normal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
When when you when you then moved from, you were on 42 and then the last one on your 44th, the time after, because this is now 11 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, let's start with the first time right after. So like, did your practices change or what happened in that period after?
So, I'm just trying to reflect a little bit
Yeah.
on. So the practice the practice has changed in that I wasn't bleeding anymore,
Mm,
but the connection to the womb space and the connection
mm,
to this part of my body remained and
mm,
continued to grow, right?
mm.
It continued to, I continued to cultivate relationship with
Yeah,
a new way that
yeah,
my body was beginning to present itself. So
yeah,
I had symptoms I had not experienced before. So I had, like vaginal dryness. That was not something that
Gotcha.
was present in my youth,
Mm.
but is present, after I
Yeah.
stopped bleeding, or like, itching, or like my breasts weren't really tender like they were when I was going through. It was a different type. It was,
Yeah.
so the shifts and changes, like I had to just ride them out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes they were frustrating,
Yes.
and sometimes they were not
Yeah.
frustrating. And my libido, my sexual
Yeah.
nature shifts and changes, and
Yeah.
it still doesn't really have a rhythm, right? So when I
Yeah.
was bleeding, I kind of could count on certain times of the month when I would feel
Yes.
certain ways,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
That wasn't necessarily the case,
Mm.
in post menopause.
Yeah.
So it's like I had, just being with what, oh, now I'm feeling frisky,
Yeah.
now I'm not,
Yeah.
engaging in sexual activity with my partner
Yeah.
when I wasn't feeling very frisky, and
Yeah.
what is that like now? Like,
Yeah.
just it's just a range.
Yeah.
And it was just important to stay with it. So
Yes.
if I was frustrated, I was frustrated. If
Yeah.
I was sad, if I was crying, if I was happy and excited, like,
Yeah.
just it was just important for me to stay with what is here.
Yeah.
And I'm an herbalist, so I would make my little concoctions,
Yeah.
make oils, make
Yeah.
herbal teas, like
Yeah.
just doing the research around those things, which was
Yes.
a really great new area of learning.
Yes.
And again, it was important that I didn't create pathology
Yes.
like around what was
Yeah.
happening. So even in the herbal creations and things like that, it was very nutritive. I wanted to stick with my lineage of nourishment
Yeah.
rather than treatment.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so yeah, it's been a windy road.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11 years in, I feel
Yeah.
like there's more acceptance and more openness,
Yes.
um, to where things are,
Yeah.
and not attached to where they stay.
Mm.
I've introduced, other practices that have deepened my relationship
Yeah.
with my womb space and with my yoni, that,
Yeah.
there's like a new layer
Yeah.
of um, connection
Yeah.
that I didn't have before, which
Yeah.
is really, really juicy. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of been the journey.
I suppose there's also, well, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if this is not your experience, but there like with not having to bleed like every month, or there's not that quote unquote, don't want to call it distraction, but like it's more like you're able to then more deeply focus on what is there now, rather
Hmm.
than having to go through the bleed every month. Does that make sense? Like
It
the
it it makes sense, but that wasn't my experience.
no,
I never saw my bleed as a distraction. It
gotcha,
was always everything that I was moving through with my bleed was
yeah,
always purposeful. So I
gotcha,
never felt distracted
no,
by the care of
no,
my womb space or the care that I
yeah,
gave myself throughout the
yeah,
bleeding time.
yeah,
So even when I was bleeding, I was able to focus and
yeah,
be in that space. And even
yeah,
when I'm not bleeding, so
yeah,
that when you say that, it sounds like there's the, yeah, like it feels like the bleeding time is like this distraction that's
yeah,
taking you away from yourself. And I have not experienced that to
yeah,
be true.
yeah, yeah,
Um, it's the same attention.
yeah,
It is a different type of attention
gotcha,
because
yeah,
something's happening that isn't happening
yeah,
physically.
yeah,
But I tend to not separate out. I don't separate emotional, spiritual, and physical. Like
Mm.
that's a it's a it's a very modern way of
Yes.
looking at things, right? We
Yes.
compartmentalize things.
Yes.
My
Yeah.
worldview is much
Yeah.
different, and
Yeah.
it's when I say the body, I'm not talking about the physical body. I'm talking about everything,
Yes. The
right?
entirety of
Yeah, the wholeness. So
I
yeah.
remember, I remember this was when I was in my teenage years because you mentioned, the curse and stuff. And I remember people saying this and it never resonated with me because for me it was a signal that I was not pregnant. And so it's like, how is that a curse? And
Mm,
they in Danish they would call it shit, like I have my shit. And it's like it always
mm,
felt wrong. It never resonated with me to
mm-hmm.
call it that, even though I didn't understand,
Yeah.
what I know now today. But
Yes.
it never resonated with me. But I get what you say in terms of the totality of the experience. And I suppose that is part of the issue that we have today, and also part of why I wanted to have these conversations is
Yeah.
to hopefully bring awareness to um, the possibility, like because you're sharing what, like you're really sharing what a possibility, like you're sharing a possibility for someone who can do the work and has done the work, which I
Hmm.
absolutely love. I wish, I had started 20 years ago so that I could be in a different space, and not saying that because I can still do things today, and I am doing, and you're inspiring things already. So that's wonderful. Um, in terms of the healing or the medicine, because you've talked about your lineage as well, and as an energy worker myself, I know that when we heal, we both heal forward and we also heal backwards.
Hmm.
So I'm
Hmm.
wondering if there's anything you want to share in terms of your lineage and the healing back and forth, in terms of
Hmm.
that, recovering, I suppose, the
Yeah.
medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Um, yeah, I was still, yeah, I was still reflecting on the comment you made before
Yeah.
about wishing you were. And there are probably lots of women who like wish they were, oh, I wish I had done
Yeah.
these things so that I wouldn't be
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
experiencing this now.
Yeah.
And I guess I was reflecting on that and just thinking, and just really feeling, um yeah, just feeling what wants to come through. It's this, everything happens as it should, right? And so like there's something really
Yeah.
beautiful about this spot that you're in,
Yeah.
and that many women will be in when they hear other stories of different things. It's so easy to say, oh, I wish I had done, but it's like there's
Yeah.
something very precious about right now and right here, and
Yeah.
what you and many other women are to get from this spot,
Yeah.
right? From right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just felt like I wanted to speak into that because I know women can get lost in, oh my God, like your story is so romantic, right? And I wish I had done those things to prevent what I'm experiencing now. And it's like there is
Yeah.
no prevention
No.
of what you're experiencing now, right? Like I know you know this, but
Yeah.
just kind of saying it out loud, it's
Yeah.
like where we are is where we are,
Yes.
and there's something very rich right here, and we start from this spot.
Yeah.
So celebrating your blood now,
Yeah.
right, for someone who might only have 1 year left of
Yeah.
bleeding, who might choose to
Yeah.
have surgery, which will,
Yeah.
complete their bleeding experience, and
Yeah.
only have a few months,
Yeah.
1 month maybe. They learn all this the month before they're going to have a hysterectomy, let's say.
Yeah.
That 1 month that you learn something and then
Yeah.
you do it, it changes things, and it changes things back, and it
Yes.
changes things forward, even though
Yeah.
it only happened that one time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's like, and I also, because I've been doing a lot of work, right? It's
mhm,
and so yeah. So it's the both and, right? It's the both wishing and then also recognizing it's not the
yeah,
either or, because
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that
Yeah.
and for
Oh,
that
yeah.
reflection. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're welcome. And I guess that leads into that, 7 generations forward and back, that
Yeah.
whatever we do, right, we're affecting
Yeah.
those 7 generations forward and 7 generations back.
Yeah.
Um, and I trust that, and that's deeply inside of me,
Yeah.
that whatever I do, it's going forward and it's going back.
Yeah.
And so any practice, any ritual, any just, beyond the formal like
Mm,
ritual, right?
mm,
Just living,
mm,
um, I know is supporting forward and back. Like I'm
mm,
always in connection with my mother, my grandmother, and further
mm,
back. And I'm
mm,
always in connection to those who have not yet come.
mm.
And I try to live my life knowing this,
Yeah.
that everything is always
Yeah.
sent forward and sent back.
Yeah.
Whether I'm intentionally doing it or not,
Yeah.
it is happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I like to say that we become like
yeah.
we stand upon the shoulders of those who came before us, and we will be the foundation for those that come after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's a continuous expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And also, again, going back to the whole wishing, like, well, if I had known, I could have, like, I would have
Mm-hmm.
probably would have done to something to, but I didn't, and now I do. And I really want to emphasize and highlight what you said in terms of if someone is showing up and thinking, oh my God, it's too late. Like what you just shared is that it's never too late. Like you can start, like I do share my blood with the land. I do attribute when I moved into where I'm at right now, it wasn't very fertile or it was very run down. And I do attribute my sharing of my blood with the land to
Mm-hmm.
the rich, like the I also use it as a boundary. I've used it to spread around my
Mm-hmm.
property as a boundary setter. It's like to be
Mm-hmm.
this is my space as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, in terms of the cups, and like you say, like again, what you're sharing is that I now have the opportunity to work in this with this for the next however long.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a sense that I think that intuitively, I think that there is a reason why I've started this segment of the podcast. I think that
Mm-hmm.
there's a like there is a preparation because I'm always guided. So there's even though I surrender, I don't know, but
Uh-huh.
I'm surrendering.
Yeah.
I suspect that there is a reason why this is happening, and
Yeah.
the more that we can share these conversations,
Yeah.
and also the different experience, because like I said, Julie Parker, who I had on, had a very different experience from
Mm-hmm.
yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also heard from other people who's also had a very gentle experience, and I've heard from
Mm-hmm.
other who's like going batshit crazy over it. So, and I'm somewhere in the middle. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful to share like that it's not one way, like there's
That's
like
right.
this is the right way and this is how you
Uh-huh.
do it, right? Like yeah.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah. That feels really really important to me. Like that resonates very well,
yeah.
that there is no one way that we
No.
should be walking through this journey.
No.
I feel like there's a lot of messaging, right? That if you're not within, like, if you're
Yes.
not within this
Yes.
spectrum, like here, like you can only work within this spectrum. And if you're
Yes.
not within this spectrum, then something is wrong and we need to
Yeah.
do something to help you get within this spectrum. So
Yes.
I think what you said about there is no one way and sharing the range of experiences,
Yes. Yes.
I feel is just so important,
Yes.
for us to hear,
Yes.
the range of it. What helped me not to be so fearful. My mother passed when I was very young. I was 12 when my mother passed away. So I never saw a woman move into, as a child,
Gosh.
as a young girl, I didn't
Yes.
see a woman move into this time of her life.
Yeah.
But because I connected into a sister circle that had
Mm,
elder women
mm,
listening, connecting, watching, like them move through this in
mm,
a way that was aligned
mm.
to um, surrender and opening,
Yeah.
right? Helped me to know that when I got here, there was nothing to fear.
Yeah.
and there was nothing to hide from.
Yes.
And I didn't have to fit into any small spectrum of
Yes.
experiences, and anything outside of that was
Yes.
abnormal.
Yeah.
It was all normal. Like the spectrum was
Yes.
huge and it was all normal.
Yeah.
So that really supported me and
Yeah.
helped me
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
along this journey.
And it's for me personally, that's not just in terms of moon pause or menopause. That's in
Absolutely.
terms of business and work and every like
Hmm.
there seems to be like, oh, this is the one way. Like and if
Yeah.
and what that does, it adds so much shame and guilt and fear and worry and concern and all of these things because oh, I must not be doing it right because I'm not like this.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so but like I that's just me like going taking that out. Like let's just pull that out. That um
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
one of the questions I've started asking, I forget sometimes, but since the podcast is named Mastery, I'd like to know what is mastery to you?
Mm. What is mastery to me? Gosh, I'm never good with questions like this because I'm a contemplator.
Oh, well,
I contemplate things, like I sit with them for periods of time,
yes.
and those questions that kind of like, oh yeah, I'm like, I don't know, I need to sit with it for another like 28 days and like deepen into it. So like right now, like, yeah, I'm like, what is mastery? It's like I have no idea. Like living your best life.
Yes,
I
yes,
have
yes,
no
live.
idea. Like
Yes,
just living your best life
beautiful.
and
And
trusting in the flow.
yes, yes. And I love your honesty in that because that is also a mastery to me, actually. That is owning like I don't know right now, and this is where I'm at with it, and then being
Yeah.
okay with that,
Yeah.
and not being like not just answering the demands of the world, right? Like that, like
Yeah.
no, but that's like that actually in that way you actually just demonstrate, at least to me, you just
Yes.
demonstrated
I
like
totally get it. Yeah.
this is so I love that. Um,
Yeah.
this is such a rich conversation. I can energetically, like, no, I'm starting to cry, but energetically, I can just move. I can sense the deepness of the vibration and the frequency of the
Mm,
medicine that you've shared.
mm.
And I want to say that just by quote unquote, by being who you are and sharing your truth. Is there anything else? Is there something that I haven't asked?
Oh my
That you'd
goodness.
like to share? And I'll
Hmm.
give you a moment to contemplate. I'm not asking.
Yeah, so I'm like, so I have my computer on my desk and it faces the outside, so I'm looking out to see like, okay, tree, is there anything else that wants to be said? And I'm looking at these roses that are blooming right now. And it feels like what wants to be shared is like coming from the roses, and it's about the unfolding.
Yes.
Because you know how the rose, it just kind of like there's all these petals, and it's this bud, and then it just kind of opens and unfolds, and um the menopause journey, which for me begins right like at birth. Like it's
Yeah.
each bleed is one bleed less.
Yes.
um that, you know, once we enter into that stage,
Yes.
like it's a part of our maturation process as a woman.
Mm,
And it's just what I feel like to say is just it's about
mm,
trusting the unfolding of this time of our
mm,
lives.
mm,
When we enter into perimenopausal and we kind
mm,
of keep moving along, it's like be like the rose and trust the unfolding that's
mm.
happening, and that bud, that unfolding of that rose it's gorgeous.
Yes.
Like it's beautiful, all these
Yes.
different petals that just kind of like fall open.
Yes.
And then the petals will fall off,
Yeah.
right? They'll fall off. And
Yeah.
in that, like I love, I love going out onto the land and seeing where the petals have fallen on the ground.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful how they're just kind of scattered, like right, there. And it's like
Yeah.
just trust the unfolding and knowing that, yep, and it will come a time when all the petals will be on the ground.
Yeah.
And even that is beautiful. And then there'll be another bud
Yes.
for it to go all over again.
And it happens without any thought or
Yep.
consideration on our part.
Yep.
Like
And
I
it's
like to
just,
say that we've forgotten that we are not apart from nature, but we are a part of nature, and we
yes.
follow the same, rhythms and cycles
Yes.
of that. I call it a continuous expansion, the continuous
Hmm.
unfolding us,
Yes. Yeah.
and the unveiling, the lifting of the veils, I like to call it, because it's sort of like remembering the medicine and the wisdom,
Yeah.
rather than it's not maybe it is relearning it, but there's a remembering in it,
A
like
remembrance.
there's a remembrance.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. That's beautiful. So for me, I am nature. We are nature.
yes,
For me, and in my view, it's not,
yes,
we're not a part of nature. We are nature. We are
yes,
that. We are we are nature for
yes,
me.
yes,
So,
agreed,
and that remembrance is oh so delightful.
yes,
To come
yes,
into that remembrance.
and
Um,
satisfying, right? It's like there's a
it's
satisfaction in
yeah,
it.
yeah. And I think the last thing maybe that also wanted to be shared, it kind of just came up to, I think that was what actually came from the tree, is that for me, there is no better position than that of an elder
Mm,
and that of a grandmother. And a
mm.
grandmother, not because she has children that had children, right? But because she no longer bleeds. And for me, that is the true goddess. That
Mm.
is when we enter into the trueness of the goddess, is when we have croned, when we are no longer bleeding. And my, that's just how I view it.
Tell
But
us more. Like you can't just drop that in and be like, like
yeah, well, it doesn't have, like, I don't have a lot of words and explanations
yeah,
like around it and like all that kind of thing. I just know that deep within, when I imagine and dip into the goddess,
mm,
right, as a frequency, as an energy, she is a
mm.
crone. She
Oh,
is one she's come full circle. She has
yeah,
been through all the stages. She
yeah,
has worked
yeah,
through the stages, and
yeah,
she is in this spot now where she holds her blood,
yeah,
where she doesn't need the magic of the menses
yeah.
to access all that you access in your menses. When you crone, you are that,
Oh,
and that is the goddess to
I can
me.
see that swirling. Like I can see the womb. I can see the blood swirl in
Yes,
the womb. I could just see that.
yes, yes, yes.
'Cause, and also the word that came up for me is unbothered, because that's what I see. Like what am I? 48 and a half. I'll be 49 in March.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the level of my unbotheredness is just
Mm-hmm.
rising. Like and when I say unbotheredness, I mean personally, I care about the world
Yes,
and what
absolutely.
happens with the world and so forth. So I do care about that. At the same time, me personally, I'm
Mm-hmm.
unbothered by what you think of me or how you perceive. Like that's not on
Mm-hmm.
me anymore. Like I
Mm-hmm.
am,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, rising.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we often, how what I see is when we imagine the goddess, we imagine like
Yeah.
youthfulness and like
Yes.
this juicy, succulent youthfulness, right?
Yes.
And for me, the most juicy is the crone. She is to me the most juicy, succulent image
Wow.
of a woman's journey, like when she reaches that point.
Yeah.
So, but
Because
again, that's just me.
she is the quote unquote holy grail. She's the cup full of
Absolutely.
wisdom. She has filled her cup with wisdom, so she is bursting at the seams with it.
Bursting. She's bursting. It's just the best spot.
Well, I have something to look forward to, I can hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Chonteau, I just want to say thank you so much for
Oh,
joining
thank
the
you.
Sacred
Yeah.
Conversation. Thank you for sharing your medicine, for showing up, for yum, just the yumminess of everything that you shared. That's good. Like the yum. I like the yum. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to say that there's going to be a link in the description where I'm going to be linking to Chonteau's social media, bio, like whatever. There's going to be links to where you can find this goddess, really, and her medicine. So thank you for showing up, and to everyone listening. Have a wonderful day wherever in the world you might be. Lots of love.
Bye. Thank you.
That is what I have for you in today's episode of Mastery with Maria Saraphina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description and help me spread the love of this transmission by sharing it with a friend or on social media, or leave me a comment or review. Have a wonderful day. God bless.